I once sat in complete silence with a Finnish colleague for 20 minutes and thought we'd had a lovely conversation. My American friend joined us later and was convinced we'd been fighting. We hadn't exchanged 10 words. Turns out silence means everything and nothing, depending on where you're from. Let's decode the quiet. Right, let's talk about something that makes Americans deeply uncomfortable. Silence.
We're not uncomfortable with silence.
You fill every gap in conversation with noise.
We're being engaging.
You're terrified of pauses.
We are not.
You just interrupted silence to deny being afraid of it.
That's fair.
Thank you.
Okay, tell me about this Finnish colleague. 20 minutes of silence?
Her name was Kaiser. Brilliant software engineer, transferred to our London office from Helsinki.
And you just sat together silently?
We were both working on code, sitting at adjacent desks. Every so often, one of us would make an observation or ask a question, but mostly, comfortable silence.
And that didn't feel awkward?
Not at all. It felt peaceful, like we were keeping each other company without the pressure to perform conversation.
But your American friend saw it differently.
Oh, she was horrified. Pulled me aside later and asked if Kaiser and I had gotten into a fight. Said the tension was palpable.
What tension?
There wasn't any. That was just her projection. She saw silence and assumed conflict because that's what silence means in American culture.
Whereas for you and Kaisa,
it was just companionship. Comfortable coexistence. Same silence. Completely opposite interpretations.
Completely. Quick pause, huge thanks to everyone suggesting topics. This one's been requested multiple times.
Yes, brilliant ideas coming in. Keep them coming. What cultural mystery should we explore next? Feel free to suggest it, loudly or silently. We'll hear you either way.
Perfect.
So let's dig into this. Why are Americans so uncomfortable with silence?
I think it's cultural programming. Americans are taught that conversation equals connection. Silence equals disconnection or hostility.
So you're supposed to fill the space.
Exactly. Silence in American culture is something to be fixed. It's a problem. Whereas in Finnish culture,
silence is normal, expected even. You don't need to constantly verbalize to maintain connection.
I had a roommate from Finland during graduate school, Elias. Want to hear about our first week living together?
Absolutely.
It was so weird at first. I'm American, right? I'm used to small talk, chatting while cooking, commenting on the weather, whatever. Just filling the space.
Standard American behavior.
But Elias would come home, say hello, and then just exist. He'd make dinner in silence, sit on the couch reading in silence. I kept trying to start conversations, asking about his day, making observations, anything to fill the quiet.
How did he respond?
With very short answers. Fine. Yes. Okay. And then back to silence.
How did that make you feel?
Anxious. I thought I'd done something wrong, or that he didn't like me. I spent the first week convinced we were going to be terrible roommates.
What changed?
About a week in, I finally just asked, "Do you not want to talk? Did I do something to upset you?" And he looked genuinely confused.
Because he wasn't upset.
Exactly, not at all. He explained that in Finland, you don't need to talk all the time. Silence is comfortable. He said, "We're sitting in the same room. That's already social."
That's such a different framework.
Completely. And once I understood, I started to relax into it. We'd cook together in silence, watch TV without constant commentary, just coexist peacefully.
Did you end up liking it?
I actually loved it. It was so restful. Like I didn't have to perform or entertain. I could just be.
That's really beautiful.
It was. Though when my American friends visited, they thought our apartment was the most awkward place on earth. Culture clash!
Completely.
What about British silence? You said the British weaponize it.
No, we absolutely do. Silence in Britain is often passive-aggressive.
How so?
If you've upset someone British, they might just stop talking to you. Not in an obvious confrontational way, just withdrawal.
Silent treatment.
But it's subtle. They'll still be polite, still respond if you ask them something directly, but the warmth is gone.
Have you done this?
Definitely. It's the British way of expressing displeasure without actually confronting anyone.
So you punish people with silence?
We express disappointment through absence of communication.
That's the same thing!
Yes.
Does it work?
Sometimes. If the other person is British, they pick up on the subtle shift and either address it or give you space. But if they're from a more direct culture...
They have no idea anything's wrong.
Exactly. Right. They just think you're having a quiet day.
And you're sitting there seething that they haven't noticed.
It's not our finest cultural trait. What about in meetings or professional settings? How does silence work there?
That's fascinating because it varies so much. In American business culture, silence in a meeting is uncomfortable. Someone needs to fill it.
Right, because silence might mean people aren't engaged or don't have ideas.
But in Japanese business culture, silence is normal. Expected even. It's thinking time.
Tell me more about that.
In Japan, when someone finishes speaking in a meeting, there's often a pause before anyone responds. That silence is people processing, considering, formulating thoughtful responses.
But Americans see that pause and think...
That no one has anything to say, so they jump in to fill the gap.
Which interrupts the Japanese thinking process.
Exactly. Right. And then the Japanese participants feel rushed and steamrolled.
So Americans trying to be engaged are actually being disruptive.
Unintentionally, yes.
Have you experienced this?
Yes, and I handled it badly. I was in a video call with our Tokyo office. Mixed team, some British, some American, some Japanese.
What happened?
I asked a question and there was this pause. Maybe 5 seconds, which felt like an eternity. So I started elaborating, filling the silence, rephrasing the question.
And the Japanese participants?
We're trying to answer the original question, but I kept talking. One of them eventually just gave up and let me keep going.
How did you find out you'd messed up?
My British colleague messaged me afterward and said, "You need to let them think. The silence isn't awkward for them, it's necessary."
That must have been a learning moment.
It really was. Now when I'm in meetings with Japanese colleagues, I count to 10 in my head before jumping in after someone speaks.
Does that feel long?
It feels endless, but it's what they need.
It's interesting how our discomfort with silence can actually prevent communication. We're so busy filling gaps that we don't leave room for actual thought. What about negotiations? I've heard silence is a tactic there.
Oh, it absolutely is, and Americans are terrible at it.
Why?
Because in negotiations, silence creates pressure. Whoever speaks first often loses ground, but Americans can't handle the silence, so they break it.
And other cultures?
Many Asian and European negotiators are comfortable sitting in silence. They know Americans will cave and make concessions just to fill the quiet.
So silence is a strategic weapon?
Completely. And Americans hand over power because we can't tolerate the discomfort.
Have you seen this happen?
I watched an American colleague negotiate with a French business partner once. Fascinating disaster.
Tell me!
The American would make a proposal, and the French guy would just sit there, saying nothing, just looking at him.
And the American...
Panicked, started adding terms, lowering the price, throwing in extras, all because he couldn't stand the silence.
And the French negotiator?
Got an incredible deal by literally doing nothing.
That's brilliant and cruel.
It's strategic. The French guy understood that silence has power.
And the American gave that power away.
Because he'd been culturally trained that silence is uncomfortable and must be filled.
What about dating? How does silence work in romantic contexts?
Oh, this is so interesting. Because silence in dating can mean completely different things depending on culture.
Like what?
In American dating, if there's silence on a date, someone usually assumes it's going badly. We have nothing to talk about. This is awkward.
The dreaded awkward silence. But in some cultures, comfortable silence is actually a sign of intimacy. You don't need to fill every moment with chatter.
I dated someone from Sweden for a while.
And?
Our first few dates were so quiet. We'd have dinner and there would be these long pauses in conversation. I kept thinking, this is terrible. We have no chemistry.
But he was comfortable.
Totally comfortable. He later told me that the silence felt nice, that we could just be together without forcing conversation.
Different comfort zones.
Completely. Once I stopped trying to fill every silence, I actually enjoyed it more. We could have a 2-hour dinner with maybe 30 minutes of talking and it felt intimate.
That's really lovely.
It was. Though my friends thought we were the most boring couple ever.
American friends?
All of them!
What about silence's power dynamics? Like between parents and children or bosses and employees?
That's really interesting. In many cultures, children are expected to be silent around adults. Silence equals respect.
Right, speak when spoken to.
But in American culture, we encourage kids to speak up, share opinions, fill the space. Silence from a child might be seen as shy or trouble.
So the same quiet child is either respectful or concerning depending on the culture.
Exactly. Right. And in workplace hierarchies, silence also carries meaning.
How so?
In some Asian corporate cultures, you don't speak up in meetings if you're junior. You listen, observe, stay silent until asked directly. Whereas in American companies, silence is death. You're expected to contribute, share ideas, be visible. If you're quiet, you're not engaged or you don't care.
So the same behavior signals respect in one culture and disengagement in another.
Exactly.
What happens when these cultures work together?
Frustration on both sides. I saw this play out with a team I worked with, half American, half Korean.
What happened?
The American team members would dominate meetings. They'd throw out ideas, debate loudly, interrupt each other. All normal in American meeting culture.
Standard brainstorming.
Meanwhile, the Korean team members would sit quietly, observing. Occasionally, they'd offer input if asked directly, but mostly they listened.
And the Americans thought
That the Koreans weren't engaged or didn't have ideas. There were actually complaints that they weren't contributing.
but from the Korean perspective,
They were being respectful, watching the senior people discuss, waiting for their turn, not wanting to seem presumptuous by jumping in.
two completely different meeting cultures.
Completely, and neither side understood what was happening until someone finally pointed out the cultural difference.
Did things improve?
Once we understood, yes, we started structuring meetings differently, mixing open discussion time with explicit everyone shares rounds where we'd go person by person.
So you built in both cultural styles.
Exactly. The Americans got their energetic debate time, the Koreans got structured turns where they could contribute without feeling like they were interrupting.
That's actually really smart.
It worked much better, but it required conscious effort to accommodate both comfort zones.
What about therapy? I feel like silence must be huge there.
Oh, it is! And it varies so much by culture.
How?
In Western therapy, especially American, the therapist often lets silence sit. It's a technique to encourage the patient to fill the space with whatever's on their mind.
Strategic therapeutic silence.
But for people from cultures where silence is normal, that technique doesn't work the same way. They're not uncomfortable with the quiet, so they don't feel pressure to fill it.
What happens then?
You get therapist and patient sitting in comfortable silence while the therapist thinks the patient is processing something deep, and the patient is just existing peacefully.
That's actually kind of funny.
It is! But it means therapeutic techniques designed for one cultural group don't translate universally. Have you been in therapy?
Yeah, for a bit. And my therapist was American, very talk-focused, would ask a question and then just wait.
Strategic silence.
Right. And because I'm British, I'm not super comfortable with the American level of emotional openness anyway. So those silences were genuinely awkward for me.
Did you just sit there?
Sometimes. Or I'd start rambling just to fill the space, which wasn't actually helpful. It took me a while to understand what she was doing.
Did you eventually get comfortable with it?
Somewhat. But I think the technique works better with people who are culturally primed to be uncomfortable with silence. For me, it just felt like normal quiet time.
So the same therapeutic tool has different effects based on cultural background.
Exactly.
What about grief? How does silence work in mourning across cultures?
That's really profound. Different cultures have completely opposite approaches.
Tell me.
In many Western cultures, we fill grief with words, eulogies, sharing memories, talking about the person who died. Silence feels empty or disrespectful.
Right. We honor people with words.
But in some Buddhist cultures, silence is how you honor the dead. You sit with the grief, meditate, contemplate. Words would cheapen the experience.
So the same silence is either neglectful or respectful, depending on context.
Exactly. And when cultures mix at funerals or memorials, there can be real misunderstanding.
Have you experienced this?
My grandmother passed away a few years ago. Very British funeral. Quite reserved, minimal displays of emotion, respectful, quiet.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. But we had family friends from different backgrounds attend. One couple, from a loud, expressive culture, seemed really uncomfortable with how quiet and restrained it all was.
They were expecting more open grieving?
More emotion, more sharing. They told me later they felt like we weren't really mourning, that it seemed cold.
But you were grieving, just differently.
Exactly. We were processing privately, internally. The silence was our grief.
That's really powerful, actually.
It is, but it's invisible to cultures that express grief loudly.
That's heavy.
It is, but it's important because how we use silence reveals how we process everything. Joy, grief, thought, connection.
That's actually profound. So what's the solution? How do you navigate silence across cultures?
First, recognize that your relationship with silence isn't universal.
Right. If you're American and silence makes you uncomfortable, understand that's cultural programming, not universal truth. And pay attention to how people around you use silence. Are they uncomfortable? Or are they comfortable and you're projecting discomfort onto them?
That's huge, because often we're trying to fix silence that doesn't need fixing.
What if you're in a culture where silence is normal, but you're genuinely uncomfortable?
Then find ways to adapt gradually. You don't have to become Finnish overnight if you're American, but you can learn to sit with 5 seconds of quiet before feeling the need to fill it. Building tolerance slowly.
Exactly. And recognize that discomfort isn't dangerous. It's just different. What about the reverse? If you're comfortable with silence, but others aren't.
You might need to fill the space more than feels natural to you. Add some small talk. Ask questions. Engage verbally, even when you'd prefer not to. Meet people where they are.
Right. Because if everyone's uncomfortable because you're comfortable, that's not really better.
It's all about that compromise zone again. Everything comes back to that.
Any final wisdom on silence?
Silence is a language, and like any language, fluency requires understanding what it means in different contexts. In Finland, silence is companionship. In America, it's awkwardness. In Britain, it's sometimes passive aggression. In Japan, it's thinking time. None of those are wrong. They're just different dialects of quiet.
And learning to speak multiple dialects makes you better at human connection. Because sometimes the most meaningful thing you can do is just shut up and listen.
Very un-American advice.
The most un-American.
But still true. Thanks for joining us on the Etiquette Enigma. Remember, silence isn't always awkward. Sometimes it's peaceful, strategic, respectful, or intimate.
So, before you panic and fill the quiet, ask yourself, is this silence actually a problem, or am I just uncomfortable? And if you're British, maybe use words occasionally instead of weaponizing the quiet.
We're working on it.
Sure you are.